Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Saving Private Ryan. Saving Private Ryan is a 1998 American epic war drama film directed by Steven Spielberg and written by Robert Rodat. Set during the invasion of Normandy in World War II, the film is notable for its graphic portrayal of war, and for the intensity of its opening 27 minutes, which includes a depiction of the Omaha Beach assault during the Normandy landings. It follows United States Army Rangers Captain John H. Miller and a squad as they search for a paratrooper, Private First Class James Francis Ryan, who is the last surviving brother of 4 servicemen. The film received widespread critical acclaim, winning several awards for film, cast, and crew, as well as earning significant returns at the box office. The film grossed $216.8 million domestically, making it the highest-grossing film of 1998 in the United States, and $481.8 million worldwide, making it the second highest-grossing film of 1998 worldwide. The film was nominated for 11 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. Spielberg's direction won his second Academy Award for Best Director, with 4 more awards going to the film. Saving Private Ryan was released on home video in May 1999, earning another $44 million from sales. In 2014, the film was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress, being deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. Plot: in the present day, an elderly veteran visits the Normandy American Cemetery and Memorial with his family. Upon seeing one particular grave, he falls to his knees overcome with emotion. The scene then shifts to the morning of June 6, 1944. As American soldiers land on Omaha Beach as part of the Normandy invasion, they suffer heavy losses in assaulting German defensive positions of artillery and machine guns, raining down intense fire on the American forces. Captain John H. Miller of the 2nd Ranger Battalion assembles a group to penetrate the German defenses, leading to a breakout from the beach. Elsewhere on the beach, a dead soldier lies face down in the bloody surf. His pack is stenciled Ryan S. in Washington, D.C. At the U.S. War Department, General George Marshall learns that 3 of the 4 brothers of the Ryan family were killed in action and that the 4th son, James, has been parachuted somewhere over Normandy, but is currently unable to be located. He is also informed that their mother will receive all 3 telegrams notifying her of her 3 sons' deaths on the same day. After reading Abraham Lincoln's Bixby letter aloud for his staff, he orders that James Ryan be found and returned home immediately. 3 days after D-Day, Miller receives orders to find Ryan and bring him back from the front. He assembles 6 men from his company, T/Sergeant Mike Horvath, Privates First Class Richard Ribon, and Adrian Capazzo, Private Stanley Mellish and Danny Jackson, Medic Erwin Wade, plus T/5 Timothy Upham, a cartographer and interpreter borrowed from another unit. They move out to Noiville, where they meet a squad from the 101st Airborne Division, where Capazzo is killed by a German sniper, quickly taken out by Jackson. They locate a Private James Ryan, but quickly learn he is not their man. They eventually encounter a friend of James Ryan, who tells them that he is defending an important bridge in the town of Rommel. On the way to Rommel, Miller decides to neutralize a German machine gun position at a derelict radar station. Despite his men's misgivings, Wade is killed in the skirmish. Miller, at Upham's urging, declines to execute a surviving German soldier and sets him free on the condition that he surrender to the first Allied unit he encounters. Losing confidence in Miller's leadership, Ribon declares his intention to desert, prompting a confrontation with Horvath, which Miller diffuses by disclosing his civilian background as a teacher, about which his men had set up a betting pool. Ribon reluctantly decides to stay. Outside Rommel, Miller and the squad encounters a German half-track with troops and ambush them together, with 3 paratroopers, one of whom is Ryan. In the town, Miller's squad find a small group of paratroopers preparing to defend the key bridge, and where Miller tells Ryan about his brothers and their orders to bring him home, with 2 of his men having been lost in finding him. He is distressed at the loss of his brothers, but asks Miller to tell his mother that he intends to stay with the only brothers he has left. Miller decides to join his unit with the paratroopers in defense of the bridge against the imminent German attack. Miller forms ambush positions throughout the ruined town, preparing to attack arriving tanks and infantry with mines, Molotov cocktails, detonation cords and sticky bombs made from socks filled with Composition B smeared with thick grease. Elements of the 2nd SS Panzer Division arrive with infantry and armor, comprising 2 Tiger I tanks and 2 Marder tank destroyers/light assault guns. Although they managed to inflict heavy casualties on the Germans, including destroying 1 Tiger tank and both Marders, most of the paratroopers, along with Jackson, Mellish and Horvath, are killed, while Upham avoids fighting due to his jittery nerves and hides himself from his German foes. Miller attempts to blow up the bridge, but is shot and mortally wounded by Steamboat Willie, who had somehow rejoined the Germans. In confusion and supposed desperation after suffering intense German fire, Miller crawls to the middle of the bridge and attempts to open fire on the oncoming German tank and accompanying troops with his pistol. Just before the last Tiger tank reaches the bridge, an American P-51 Mustang flies overhead and destroys the tank, followed by American armored units which rout the remaining Germans. Witnessing Miller's shooting, Upham leaps out from his hiding and confronts Steamboat Willie and his group as they attempt to retreat. Steamboat Willie raises his hands in surrender and smiles, believing that Upham will accept, because of their earlier encounter. Instead, Upham kills him, but lets the other Germans flee. Ribon and Ryan are with Miller as he dies and utters his last words. James. Earn this, earn it. Back in the present day, the elderly veteran is revealed to be Ryan and the grave he is standing at is Miller's. Ryan expresses his appreciation for what Miller and the others did for him. He then asks his wife if he is a good man, worthy of their sacrifices, to which she tells him he is. Ryan comes to attention and salutes Miller's grave. Development. In 1994, Robert Rodat wrote the script for the film. Rodat's script was submitted to producer Mark Gordon, who liked it and in turn passed it along to Spielberg to direct. The film is loosely based on the World War II life stories of the Nyland brothers. A shooting date was set for June 27, 1997. Pre-production. In casting the film, Spielberg sought to create a cast that looked the part, stating in an interview, "You know, the people in World War II actually look different than people look today," adding to this end that he cast partly based on wanting the cast to match the faces I saw on the newsreels. Before filming began, several of the film's stars, including Edward Burns, Barry Pepper, Vin Diesel, Adam Goldberg, Giovanni Ribisi, and Tom Hanks, endured 10 days of boot camp training led by Marine veteran Dale Dye and Warriors Incorporated, a California-based company that specializes in training actors for realistic military portrayals. Matt Damon was intentionally not brought into the camp to make the rest of the group feel resentment towards the character. Spielberg had stated that his main intention in forcing the actors to go through the boot camp was not to learn the proper techniques, but rather because I wanted them to respect what it was like to be a soldier. The film's second scene is a 20-plus-minute sequence recounting the landing on the beaches of Normandy. Spielberg chose to include this particularly violent sequence in order to bring the audience onto the stage with me, specifically noting that he did not want the audience to be spectators, but rather he wanted to demand them to be participants with those kids who had never seen combat before in real life, and get to the top of Omaha Beach together. Spielberg had already demonstrated his interest in World War II themes with the films 1941, Empire of the Sun, Schindler's List, and the Indiana Jones series. Spielberg later co-produced the World War II-themed television miniseries Band of Brothers and its counterpart The Pacific with Tom Hanks. When asked about this by American cinematographer, Spielberg said, "I think that World War II is the most significant event of the last 100 years. The fate of the baby boomers and even Generation X was linked to the outcome. Beyond that, I've just always been interested in World War II. My earliest films, which I made when I was about 14 years old, were combat pictures that were set both on the ground and in the air. For years now, I've been looking for the right World War II story to shoot, and when Robert Rodat wrote Saving Private Ryan, I found it." Filming. Spielberg wanted an almost exact replica of the Omaha Beach landscape for the movie, including similar sand and a bluff similar to the one where German forces were stationed, and a near match was found in Ireland. The D-Day scenes were shot in Balliniska Beach, Curracloe Strand. Balliniska, just east of Curracloe, County Wexford, Ireland. Hanks recalled to Roger Ebert that although he realized it was a movie, the experience still hit him hard, stating, "The first day of shooting the D-Day sequences, I was in the back of the landing craft, and that ramp went down and I saw the first 1, 2, 3, 4 rows of guys just getting blown to bits. In my head, of course, I knew it was special effects, but I still wasn't prepared for how tactile it was." Filming began June 27, 1997, and lasted for 2 months. Some shooting was done in Normandy, for the Normandy American Cemetery and Memorial in Colville-sur-Mer and Calvados. Other scenes were filmed in England, such as a former British aerospace factory in Hatfield, Hertfordshire, Tame Park, Oxfordshire, and Wiltshire. Production was due to also take place in Seaham, County Durham, but government restrictions disallowed this. Portrayal of history. Saving Private Ryan has received critical acclaim for its realistic portrayal of World War II combat. In particular, the sequence depicting the Omaha Beach landings was named the best battle scene of all time by Empire magazine, and was ranked #1 on TV Guide's list of the 50 greatest movie moments. The scene cost $12 million and involved up to 1,500 extras, some of whom were members of the Irish Reserve Defence Forces. Members of local reenactment groups such as the 2nd Battle Group were cast as extras to play German soldiers. In addition, 20 to 30 actual amputees were used to portray American soldiers maimed during the landing. Spielberg did not storyboard the sequence, as he wanted spontaneous reactions and for the action to inspire me as to where to put the camera. The historical representation of Charlie Company's actions, led by its commander, Captain Ralphie Goranson, was well maintained in the opening sequence. The sequence and details of the events are very close to the historical record, including the seasickness experienced by many of the soldiers as the landing craft moved toward the shoreline, significant casualties among the men as they disembarked from the boats, and difficulty linking up with adjacent units on the shore. The distinctive signature, ping, of the U.S. soldiers' M1 Garand rifles ejecting their ammunition clips is heard throughout the battle sequence. The contextual details of the company's actions were well maintained. For instance, the correct code names for the sector Charlie Company assaulted and adjacent sectors were used. Included in the cinematic depiction of the landing was a follow-on mission of clearing a bunker and trench system at the top of the cliffs, which was not part of the original mission objectives for Charlie Company, but which they did undertake after the assault on the beach. The landing craft used included 12 actual World War II examples, 10 LCVPs, and 2 LCMs, standing in for the British LCAs that the Ranger companies rode into the beach during Operation Overlord. The filmmakers used underwater cameras to better depict soldiers being hit by bullets in the water. 40 barrels of fake blood were used to simulate the effect of blood in the seawater. This degree of realism was more difficult to achieve when depicting World War II German armored vehicles, as few examples survive in operating condition. The Tiger I tanks in the film were copies built on the chassis of old, but functional, Soviet T-34 tanks. The two vehicles described in the film as Panzers were meant to portray Marder III tank destroyers. One was created for the film using the chassis of a Czech-built Panzer 38 tank similar to the construction of the original Marder III. The other was a cosmetically modified Swedish Sav M/43 assault gun, which also used the 38 chassis. There are, however, historical inaccuracies in the film's depiction of the Normandy campaign. At the time of the mission, American forces from the two American beach areas, Utah and Omaha, had not yet linked up. In reality, a Ranger team operating out of the Omaha Beach area would have had to move through the heavily enemy-occupied city of Carrington, or swim or boat across the estuary linking Carrington to the channel, or transfer by boat to the Utah landing area. On the other hand, U.S. forces moving out of Utah would have had direct and much shorter routes, relatively unencumbered by enemy positions, and were already in contact with some teams from both U.S. airborne divisions landed in the area. The Utah Beach landings, however, were relatively uncontested, with assault units landing on largely unoccupied beaches and experiencing far less action than the landings at Omaha. The filmmakers chose to begin the narrative with a depiction of the more dramatic story of Omaha, despite the strategic inaccuracy of an impossible mission that could easily have been pursued from the other beach area. In addition, one of the most notable of the operational flaws is the depiction of the 2nd SS Panzer Division Das Reich as the adversary during the fictional Battle of Rommel. The 2nd SS was not engaged in Normandy until July, and then at Caen against the British and Canadians, 100 miles east. Furthermore, the Murderate River bridges were not an objective of the 101st Airborne Division, but of the 82nd Airborne Division, part of Mission Boston. Much has also been said about various tactical errors made by both the German and American forces in the film's climactic battle. Spielberg responded, saying that in many scenes he opted to replace sound military tactics and strict historical accuracy for dramatic effect. Some other technical errors were also made, often censored, including the mistaken reversed orientation of the beach barriers, the tripod obstructions with a mine at the apex. To achieve a tone and quality that was true to the story as well as reflected the period in which it is set, Spielberg once again collaborated with cinematographer Janusz Kaminski, saying, "Early on, we both knew that we did not want this to look like a Technicolor extravaganza about World War II, but more like color newsreel footage from the 1940s, which is very desaturated and low-tech." Kaminski had the protective coating stripped from the camera lenses, making them closer to those used in the 1940s. He explains that, without the protective coating, the light goes in and starts bouncing around, which makes it slightly more diffused and a bit softer without being out of focus. The cinematographer completed the overall effect by putting the negative through bleach bypass, a process that reduces brightness and color saturation. The shutter timing was set to 90 or 45 degrees for many of the battle sequences, as opposed to the standard of 180-degree timing. Kaminski clarifies, "In this way, we attained a certain staccato in the actors' movements and a certain crispness in the explosions, which makes them slightly more realistic." Box office. Saving Private Ryan was a critical and commercial success and is credited with contributing to a resurgence in America's interest in World War II. Old and new films, video games, and novels about the war enjoyed renewed popularity after its release. The film's use of desaturated colors, handheld cameras, and tight angles has profoundly influenced subsequent films and video games. Saving Private Ryan was released in 2,463 theaters on July 24, 1998, and grossed $30.5 million on its opening weekend. The film grossed $216.5 million in the US and Canada, and $265.3 million in other territories, bringing its worldwide total to $481.8 million, and making it the highest-grossing U.S. film of the year. Box Office Mojo estimates that the film sold over 45.74 million tickets in the United States and Canada. Critical response. The film received critical acclaim and has a certified fresh rating of 92% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 132 reviews, with an average score of 8.6 out of 10. The consensus states, anchored by another winning performance from Hanks, Spielberg's unflinchingly realistic war film virtually redefines the genre. The film also has a score of 90 out of 100 on Metacritic based on 35 critic reviews indicating universal acclaim. Much of the praise went for the realistic battle scenes and the actors' performances. However, it did earn some criticism for ignoring the contributions of several other countries to the D-Day landings in general and at Omaha Beach specifically. The most direct example of the latter is that during the actual landing the 2nd Rangers disembarked from British ships and were taken to Omaha Beach by Royal Navy landing craft. The film depicts them as being United States Coast Guard crewed craft from an American ship. This criticism was far from universal, with other critics recognizing the director's intent to make an American film. The film was not released in Malaysia after Spielberg refused to cut the violent scenes. However, The film was finally released there on DVD, with an 18SG certificate much later in 2005. Many critics associations, such as New York Film Critics Circle and Los Angeles Film Critics Association, chose Saving Private Ryan as Film of the Year. Roger Ebert gave it 4 stars out of 4 and called it a powerful experience. Filmmaker Robert Altman wrote a letter to Spielberg stating, "Private Ryan was awesome, best I've seen." Filmmaker Quentin Tarantino has expressed admiration for the film and has cited it as an influence on his 2009 film, Inglourious Basterds. Many World War II veterans stated that the film was the most realistic depiction of combat they had ever seen. The film was so realistic that combat veterans of D-Day and Vietnam left theaters rather than finish watching the opening scene depicting the Normandy invasion. Their visits to post-traumatic stress disorder counselors rose in number after the film's release, and many counselors advised more psychologically vulnerable veterans to avoid watching it. The Department of Veterans Affairs set up a nationwide hotline for veterans who were affected by the film, and less than 2 weeks after the film was released it had already received over 170 calls. The film has gained criticism and negative reviews from war veterans and film critics. Film director and military veteran Oliver Stone has accused the film of promoting the worship of World War II as the Good War, and has placed it alongside films such as Gladiator and Black Hawk Down that he believes were well made, but may have inadvertently contributed to Americans' readiness for the 2003 invasion of Iraq. In defense of the film's portrait of warfare, Brian De Palma commented, "The level of violence in something like Saving Private Ryan makes sense, because Spielberg is trying to show something about the brutality of what happened." Actor Richard Todd, who performed in The Longest Day and was amongst the first of the Allied soldiers to land in Normandy, said the film was rubbish, overdone. American academic Paul Fussell, who saw combat in France during World War II, objected to what he described as the way Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan, after an honest, harrowing, 15-minute opening visualizing details of the unbearable bloody mess at Omaha Beach, degenerated into a harmless, uncritical patriotic performance apparently designed to thrill 12-year-old boys during the summer bad film season. Its genre was pure cowboys and Indians, with the virtuous cowboys of course victorious. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?